We go to yeshiva to learn, that's Torah. We seek closeness to Gedolim, that's Torah. We daven for inspiration and v'sein chalkeinu b'sorasecha, that's Torah. We come up with chidushim in our own learning, that's Torah. Maybe. Welcome to Torah Maybe. I'm Steve Geller. My personal preference when learning Torah is, along with all the amazing lessons and interpretations we get from Chazal on every pasuk in the Torah, at least one of those interpretations should agree with the actual wording of the pasuk. And they almost always do, but there are exceptions. This piece is one of them, when none of the common commentaries offers an explanation of the pasuk's actual wording. Let's take a look. Right after Az Yashir, in Shmos 15:20, V'tikach Miriam Hanavia and Miriam the prophetess, Achos Aaron, Aaron's sister, Es Hatof Biyadav, picked up a drum, and all the women went after her with dances and drums. The next pasuk, V'tan lahem Miriam, and Miriam responded to them, Shiru LaHashem, sing to Hashem, for he triumphed gloriously, throwing the horse and rider into the sea. On this, I have two questions. Notice that it says V'tan lahem Miriam, and Miriam responded to them. The word lahem is masculine. Since she was speaking to the women, why wasn't the pasuk worded lehen, lamed hey nun, in the feminine? Rashi says that Moshe sang to the men and Miriam sang to the women. Other commentaries say it's written in the masculine because she spoke forcefully like a man. Several commentators give alternative explanations as to why it's written in the masculine. By alternative, I mean none of the explanations explain why the Torah implies that she was, in fact, speaking to men. Shouldn't one explanation fit the literal meaning of the pasuk? That's what we're here to try to accomplish. Question 2, the pasuk says, V'tikach Miriam Hanavia. It called Miriam a prophetess. We're very familiar with Miriam prior and many times after this event. Why mention here that she was a prophetess? Especially since her famous prophecy that she told her parents they would give birth to the one who'd bring the Jews out of Egypt happened 80 years before. I'm going to try to answer these questions, but we have to learn a Gra and a Rambam on the events leading up to and through the splitting of the Yam Suf, specifically two psukim that seem very familiar. In Parshas Beshalach 14:22, Vayavo b'nei Yisrael, and b'nei Yisrael went b'soch hayam bayabasha, between the water on dry land, v'hamayim lahem choma, and the water was a wall for them, miminam u'mismolam, on the right and on the left. After this, Paro and all his horses, chariots, and horsemen followed b'nei Yisrael into the Yam Suf, but their wheels got stuck. They tried to flee. Hashem told Moshe to cause the waters to return to their form, drowning all of the soldiers until there remained not a single one. Right after that, the Torah seems to repeat, Uvnei Yisrael halchu, and Bnei Yisrael went by Yabasha b'soch hayam, on the land between the water, v'hamayim lahem choma, and the water was a wall for them, miminam and mismolam, on the right and on the left. Although these two psukim seem identical, the Vilna Gaon brilliantly points out two critical differences. In the first pasuk, Vayavo b'nei Yisrael, they went b'soch hayam bayabasha, between the water on dry land. V'hamayim lahem choma, the word for wall, choma, is spelled ches vav mem hey. The second says, Uvnei Yisrael halchu bayabasha b'soch hayam. The second went on the land, which was already between the water. V'hamayim lahem choma, choma is spelled with 3 letters, missing the vav. What does all this mean? According to the Gra and the Ramban, this is indicating two groups at the Yam Suf. Group 1 had the faith to jump into the water, and for them the wall was a strong wall, spelled with 4 letters. Group 2 lacked the faith to jump in. They waited for the water to split. When they saw the land, they walked through, but when they were standing next to this miraculous wall of water, it was a weak wall. It only had 3 letters, meaning they were afraid of it, as they were afraid to jump in to begin with. Ramban actually explains when these two groups originally split. Right before this, in Shmos 14:10-12, Paro drew near. Bnei Yisrael raised their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were advancing upon them. V'yiru ma'od, greatly frightened, v'yitzaku b'nei Yisrael el Hashem. Bnei Yisrael cried out to Hashem. But the very next pasuk, v'yomru el Moshe, hamibli ein kvarim b'Mitzrayim l'kachtanu lemos b'midbar. They said to Moshe, were there no graves in Mitzrayim that you brought us to die in the desert? What have you done to us, taking out of Mitzrayim? Is this not the very thing we told you in Mitzrayim, saying, let us be, we'll serve the Egyptians, for it's better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert? desert. When Bnei Yisrael lifted their eyes and they saw the Egyptians coming, they cried out, but this second group displayed the greatest degree of disrespect to Hashem and Moshe possible, completely disregarding all the miracles done to that point and rejecting the efforts on their behalf to liberate them from hundreds of years of slavery. Indeed, Rambam suggests that it's impossible that the same mouth that cried out to Hashem could have uttered that subsequent blasphemy. He suggests this indicated the two groups, one looking to Hashem and the other believing their fate rested in their efforts to return to Egypt. The response of Moshe sounded like a rebuke, telling Bnei Israel to have no fear. Hashem yilachem lachem. Hashem will do battle for you. V'atem tacharishum. And you stand there quietly. The Torah then tells us the famous pasuk, V'yomer Hashem el Moshe, Ma titach alai? Why are you crying out to me? Daber el Bnei Israel v'yisau. Tell Bnei Israel to go forward. Then Hashem tells Moshe the game plan, which includes a now surprising revelation. Lift up your staff and stretch out your arm over the sea and split it. But listen to this. Vayavo Bnei Israel. Bnei Israel should go besoch hayam bayabasha, between the waters on the dry land. Up until now, we've assumed that those who jumped into the water were displaying an extra degree of bitachon. Now we see the opposite. Jumping into the water was Hashem's instruction all along. Now we understand that there were two groups with two separate ideologies at Kriyas Yamsuf. This is very important to understanding the rest of the events. Right after that second pasuk of the Jews going through Kriyas Yamsuf, we have two psukim that we say every morning. V'yosha Hashem b'yam hahu es Yisrael miyad Mitzrayim. On that day, Hashem saved Israel from the hand of Mitzrayim. V'yar Yisrael es Mitzrayim meis asfas hayam. And Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. V'yar Yisrael es hayad hagadola. And Israel saw the great hand asher asa Hashem b'Mitzrayim, that Hashem inflicted on the Mitzrayim. V'yiruham es Hashem. And the people revered Hashem. V'yaminu ba'Hashem u'v'Moshe avdo. They had faith in Hashem and Moshe his servant. In these two psukim, the Torah refers to Bnei Israel simply as Yisrael, suggesting a unification of the two groups. This idea of unification is supported by the Zohar that explains that Yisrael refers to Yaakov, that Yaakov saw that Hashem had kept his promise to bring Bnei Israel out of Egypt. Rav Zalman Sorotzkin, in his foundational commentary, Oznaim LaTorah, explains the meaning of Yad HaGadolah. Rav Sorotzkin explains that there are different kinds of miracles that Hashem performs on our behalf. The most miraculous is Yad HaGadolah, where no human action on our own behalf is required. The example of this that Rav Sorotzkin gives is Chizkiyahu and the miraculous salvation against Sancherib and his army of 180,000 people. The Midrash Eicha Rabbah gives dialogue to Chizkiyahu's prayer. I don't have strength to kill or to chase or to sing songs of praise. Rather, I will sleep on my bed and you will do. As Chizkiyahu slept, Hashem's plague destroyed all of Sancherib's army except for 10 people who served as witnesses to tell others of what happened. But this explanation of Rav Sorotzkin fits perfectly into our narrative, as seen in Moshe's declaration above. Hashem will do battle, and you'll stand there quietly. This perfectly describes Rav Sorotzkin's explanation of the Yad HaGadolah miracle. Right after the unification of the term Yisrael, we sadly see the next pasuk pronounce Az Yashir Moshe Uvnei Yisrael. Moshe and Bnei Yisrael chose to sing this song to Hashem. With the reference back to Bnei Yisrael, the Torah suggests that even after the unifying experience of seeing the Egyptians dead and the Yad HaGadolah, not everyone sang Shira. This brings us full circle back to the original question of which men, Lechem, was Miriam and the women talking to. It's now easy to suspect that it was our second group, who uttered the slander to Moshe at the Yam Suf, who waited to answer the Yam Suf until it split. This same group did not sing the Shira, which is why the pasuk returns to Az Yasher Moshe Uvnei Yisrael, the lashon of two groups. This is my assumption for this piece. But is it a fair assumption? Rav Yosef Soloveitchik Zatzal seemed to think so. In the Chumash Mesoras Harav Shmos, pages 116 and 117, he concurs with Rav Sorotzkin that there are different kinds of miracles. One where man makes an effort and Hashem becomes his partner. The other where Hashem does the work and man does an act proving his faith. Rav Soloveitchik asks why the Jews sang no songs of praise the night before Yetzias Mitzrayim, but waited 7 days until the splitting of the Yam Suf to sing. The reason lies in a fundamental difference between the exodus of Egypt and the splitting of the sea. God did not have, nor did he seek man's assistance. You shall not go out any man from the entrance of his house until morning. The Jews were to remain in their homes, eating of the Korban Pesach, and watch as the events unfolded. In such a case, the expression of gratitude is suppressed. In contrast, in the splitting of the Yam Suf, Hashem offered the Jews a role in their own redemption. He required a leap of faith, a jump into the water prior prior to the parting of the Yam Suf. The shock of cold water, the fear of drowning became Israel's minute contribution to the miracle. At that moment, they became partners with God, and as a result, Moshe and the people full-throatedly sang the majestic Az Yashir in gratitude. Look at how beautiful this Rav Soloveitchik commentary is. We know that Hashem performed the Yad HaGadola at Kriyas Yam Suf, and we also know that Hashem's instruction to Moshe was that Vayavo b'nei Yisrael b'so chayam bayabasha, that even though it was a Yad HaGadola requiring no act by B'nai Yisrael, we were still given the chance to jump into the water to prove our faith, just as Rav Soloveitchik says. Rav Soloveitchik confirms that the only people who sang Az Yashir were the ones who had jumped into the water. It's clear from this that the second group who slandered Moshe at the Yam, who didn't jump into the sea and didn't sing Shira, could be the group of men that Miriam addressed in the masculine, Vatan Lahem Miriam. The problem is, pasuk describing the group who didn't jump in the water in Shmos 14:29 is 23 psukim away from the pasuk of Miriam. Wouldn't it be a little more convincing if the group of men that Miriam was talking to was a little bit closer to her own mention in the Torah? Well, let's look at the pasuk right before Miriam. The last line of Az Yashir is the pasuk right before V'tikach Miriam Hanaviyah. The last line of Az Yashir, when Paro's army came with its chariots and horsemen into the sea, and Hashem turned back the waters of the sea upon them, B'nai Yisrael walked Bayabasha B'so Chayam, on the dry land between the waters. This is only referring to our second group who did not jump in and did not sing. The very next pasuk, B'tikach Miriam Hanaviyah, it's fascinating that the Torah would mention just that second group right before Miriam. The commentary in the Art Scroll Stone Chumash goes even further, openly stating that this last pasuk of Az Yashir is directly connected with Miriam. According to the consensus of commentators, both on the Torah and the Siddur, where this passage is part of the morning service, this verse is not part of the song. Among the interpretations are that this verse introduces Miriam's song, telling us the event that motivated her to sing. Does Miriam need her own motivation to sing after the Yad HaGadola that all the Jews experienced? Let's look at the two psukim referencing the singing of Shira. We have Az Yashir Moshe of Bnei Yisrael, Ashira Lashem. Moshe and Bnei Yisrael sang, I will sing to Hashem. Moshe is referencing singing in the future. By Miriam, Shiru Lashem, sing to Hashem, with a command to sing. This perfectly explains why the pasuk Vatan Lahem Miriam is in the masculine, why her wording was in the form of a command to sing, and why the pasuk immediately preceding her mention was what motivated her to sing, according to the Rashbam. She was speaking to the second group who, again, spoke the slander to Moshe at the sea, didn't obey Hashem's command to jump into the sea, and didn't sing Shira to Hashem after the splitting. This perfectly ties together the Gra, the Ramban, and the Rashbam into a nice, neat little explanation. But let's look at question 2 for a second. V'tikach Miriam Hanaviyah. Why would they call Miriam a Neviah here? To answer this, let's revisit Rav Sorotzkin and maybe understand why he mentioned Chizkiyahu in explaining the concept of the Yad HaGadola. According to Chazal, one who experiences the salvation of Hashem's Yad HaGadola has to then sing Shira in gratitude. Chizkiyahu was supposed to be Mashiach. Chazal suggests why he wasn't. It was because Chizkiyahu experienced Hashem's Yad HaGadola miracle and then didn't sing Shira. According to Chazal, this cost him the destiny of becoming Mashiach and leading Klal Yisrael out of Galus. Now it's very good. Why does the Torah mention here that Miriam was a Neviah? Perhaps it's because Miriam understood that the Jews just experienced Hashem's Yad HaGadola at the Yam Suf. She saw that a group did not sing and did not commit to Ashira LaHashem, that they will sing to bring the future Geula. Maybe knowing by her prophecy what would happen to Chizkiyahu, she didn't want that to happen to us in the future. She made sure it wouldn't. She commanded that everyone sing. And that's my Torah, maybe. Thank you for watching.